So I, I'm Greg Faulkner, the pastor at Trinity Presbyterian Church, and I welcome all of you to the first of our Trinity Town Hall meetings on race. I want to begin by saying thank you to Susan Bassnagel and Jenny Stark, who have made this platform available and have been working very hard over the last 3 days to make sure this would happen. So that's been a learning curve for them, and I'm grateful for their help. I want to thank our 4 panelists today, and I would like to begin by thanking Kwesi Manu, who is one of our panelists, because this was Kwesi's brainchild, and I'm very grateful that this was his idea. We're looking forward to beginning these conversations that we feel so deeply need to be happening. So the 4 people who are with us today, first I'd like to introduce Pat Weaver, who is well known to our congregation. She's been a member for many decades. Pat is from Bridgewater, Virginia originally, has lived in Cherry Hill for many decades. She and her husband Joe moved here in the early 60s. She is the mother of 3 adult children, and we are joined by the middle child, Jeffrey, who is retired. He wanted me to stress retired orthopedic surgeon, and we're grateful that he could be with us. Kwesi Manu is a native of Ghana, is a doctor, a wound care specialist, has lived here in America for 22 years. And Juliet Akori, she is the second of 5 children born to Chineme and Agania Akori, who are members of our church from Nigeria. And Juliet is a rising junior at Johns Hopkins University in chemical and biomolecular engineering. I think that's right. So thank you all for being here, and for all of our participants, we're very glad that you're with us. We will have different kinds of formats as we go forward, but today we wanted to follow the sermon with a time to listen. So if I might, Pat, begin with you to ask you to share maybe some of your experiences of coming here to Cherry Hill and coming from the South. And I think we're kind of wide open to the format. We just want to give people a chance to tell some of their stories. And Pat, would you mind sharing some of what it was like to come to Cherry Hill nearly 60 years ago?
We moved here from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. Joe and I, we had Carol and Jeff, and my oldest child, Carol, she started school at Parkside, and Jeffrey started kindergarten at Parkside in Camden. We lived on Greenwood Avenue behind Our Lady of Lourdes, and we had sold our house because Joe took a job with RCA in Cinnaminson. Anyway, we were looking, after we sold our house in Pittsburgh, we were at a good school system. For 2 years, we rented a house in Camden, and we found this house in Cherry Hill, and we've been here ever since. Jeffrey started 2nd grade at St. Andrew's Methodist Church. Carol went to Brainerd for her 4th grade, and Jeffrey started 2nd grade at St. Andrews. And when we bought this house from Tower Realtor, a cross was burned on the lawn. They had a petition out to keep us out of the neighborhood. The realtor asked if we could leave the sign out in front of the house, the for sale sign, because she didn't want people to know we were Black. But when we moved with the cross being burned on the lawn, they broke out all the windows. They had a petition out to keep us out. And we were, they went to Cherry Hill West, they finished school, and all 3 of my kids have double degrees. Carol has journalism, and she has her master's. Jeffrey's chemical engineering and orthopedic surgeon. And my youngest, Scott, he's finance and marketing and finance, and he's in computers now. Joe used to walk the dogs, and we've been stopped so many times. When he was walking the dogs on Lafferty Drive, policeman came up and asked him what he was doing here, and he told him he lived around the corner. He started being a manager of Cherry Hill Little League, and we became interested in the kids in sports. And we started church in Cinnaminson, a Baptist church. It was all Black. But we decided to change churches because the kids had friends in Cherry Hill. So we didn't see the point in let them having to drive 10 miles to go to church and have friends there when they lived here. So, and then my daughter used to have a friend in Brandy Woods, and we would go pick her up at night, and we've been stopped so many times. The police is shining a flashlight in your face, asking you what you were doing here, where you were going. They always stopped my boys when they were driving, giving them tickets and what have you. But anyway, it's the story of my life.
Pat, I appreciate so much, and we're going to have more opportunity to hear, but you moved here in what year? 1960?
1963.
1963. I'm just trying to get kind of the context of the time. And Jeff, could I ask maybe if there's a story at this point you'd like to share?
Well, my story really began, most of where I found that race was a big deal in my life was after I left Cherry Hill. When I was here, everybody knew my father, so they had a great opinion of him, so I just sort of was in his shadow. But when I left and went to school at West Virginia University, I got my first taste of it right in my face. I had 3 real close friends when I started school at West Virginia University. We were inseparable. We saw each other every day. Well, one of my friends took me home for the weekend about 4 to 6 weeks after I started school. And his father, when he took one look at me, wouldn't let me in the house. I ensued starting an argument between Barry's mother and his father over me. It was awful. So we ended up, we had to drive 4 hours to his house, and we ended up driving 4 hours back to school. After we did our usual functions, we drank some beer in a country field, not laughing about the situation, but trying to get over the situation that had just occurred. But that sort of woke me up that I had to start getting serious about school. But then my next real bad experience in my professional life was after I finished my residency in sports medicine fellowship. I got job offers all over the country. Well, I'm more of the country boy of the 3 kids, my mom and my father. So I like to go to more rural settings. Well, there's a place called Frostburg, which is 60 miles east of West Virginia University. They offered me a job. Okay, when I got there, the first words out of the person's mouth says, "You sounded white on the phone." So obviously I didn't get that job. Then I got a nice position with the Carl Clinic in Illinois. But being the youngest guy, I was going to get the job that nobody else really, not the senior partners, wanted, which was a outlying clinic that was about 30 miles from the main clinic in a town called Danville, Illinois. Well, Danville, Illinois was a beautiful small town, but it really only had one place to eat as far as fine dining. The only other place to eat in town was at Hardee's. Well, when I got there, I got to interview the guy I was replacing. He was going back to work in a town where his wife grew up. So she was taken back home. So he told me, "You're going to have some problems, Jeff." He says, "Because there's one good place to eat in town, and you can't join the country club, and you can't golf at the country club." So he says, "You can do somebody's surgery in the morning, but you can't eat with them at night. I don't think that that's fair." So um, that didn't go over well when I said that I just didn't want to put my family, my future family, through something like that. As far as we can't eat in town. I'm a physician. But then my third experience, when I went to practice, I practiced in Kansas City. I lived in the same neighborhood as Bo Jackson. Okay, and I would come home from call. It happened 2 times in the middle of the night from trauma call. I get stopped by the police asking me, "What am I doing here?" I said, I'm 2 blocks from home. "What do you mean?" I had to go to the police station and tell them, after working hours upon hours at night, I don't appreciate being stopped when I'm trying to get home to get some rest to get ready for the next day. So it was incredible that I had to get an attorney, because I had to warn them, if they keep on doing this to me, it's unfair and I just can't exist like this. So that's my experience in my professional life.
Can you tell us when were you an undergraduate? What were those years?
I went to undergraduate in 1976 through 1980 at West Virginia.
Okay.
And
So
then I went to Rutgers from 80 to 84.
Mhm.
I did my residency at Wayne State in Detroit from 84 to 89. I did my sports medicine fellowship in Philadelphia at the Institute of Musculoskeletal Disorders and Sports Medicine in 1989 through 1990. So I went to practice in 1990, and I started in Kansas City.
So your mom's experience talking about in the 50s, 60s, you're talking about in the 70s into the late 80s, early 90s. I just want us to hear this story as a continuing story in our society.
Yes, it is.
Kwesi, I know you grew up in Ghana, and I'm wondering, maybe can you tell us something about, perhaps first about just your experience, uh, if there was experience of racism in Ghana, and maybe your thoughts about what it was like coming to America, and then what it was like when you got here, your experience. Could you do
Yes,
that?
thank you. So I moved to United States September 1998. That was almost a year after high school. So I was then just over 18. And in Ghana, there was no racism per se, but we know of the history of the slave trade. Looking back now, the issue is been whitewashed down. It's sort of almost like 3 lines or basically a page or a paragraph in how it's being thought or being think of. You still have the slave castles, but it's sort of almost, I would say glorified, but it's almost neutral. The exact history, the events that went on there, it's almost whitewashed. Like they tell you, oh, native ethnic groups in Ghana had fights, and during the war, the victors will capture, the POWs in that, terms, and then they will sell it to the white, colonizers. So basically, they exchange prisoners for guns and whiskey. That was the drink at that time. A few of those things. So what actually over time, if you learn more, is it became more of like economic activity. That it wasn't just war. People were being hunted, families were being taken, or young people were being taken and being sold for that. So they use the word trade. And looking back, I don't know if the right word is to use trade now. So the word trade sort of neutralizes the effect of what was transpiring there. And then if you go to the dungeons, the thing that is very bone chilling is below the dungeons is where the church is. It's right up, the church is right above the dungeon. So just imagine you have about 500 people stuck in almost like a 30 feet by 30 feet dungeon, and below is the church. and there's a church service going on by the white colonizers or living at the castles and, preaching the word of God, talking the word of God. And yet you have human beings underneath, no bathroom, no water, in chains. Some, imagine a woman who is in the reproductive age and they are in the dungeon sometimes for months. I mean, most of the time for months before they are being moved on. So you can imagine the conditions they're living in before they move on. So that is, even this more is a more detailed picture I'm presenting now that I've been doing a lot of readings and reflecting back. Now, fast forward to 1998 when I moved to the United States. I came here from one of the top high schools in Ghana. I've always wanted to be a medical doctor. So I was never cocky, but I was full of confidence knowing that, oh, America, you hear so much of America, people come here, opportunities for them. So I was full of confidence knowing that I have this grand opportunity to realize my dream. So I spoke to my mom, and my mom had moved here around 1991, 92. So this is almost 7 years after she moved here before I joined my mom and dad. My dad moved to the United States 1986. So I was barely 7, 8 when he moved here. So when I talked to my mom that I want to be a doctor, the first thing she said is, maybe you should consider physical therapy or being a nurse. Then I said, why? And then she's like, I don't think they will allow you to be. And from what she's saying, the few Black doctors she's encountered, from the stories they tell her, it hasn't been easy getting there. It's like a lot of obstacles. And she is saying that she doesn't have the money to help with college that much, money to help with medical school, and all the obstacles have to go through. Take the easy pathway, maybe 4-6 years tops of college and training for PT, and you have a decent job, decent place, and you're good. So she didn't want me to go through that. That's what her mind said. But I said to her, that is what I want to be. So I'm saying this because I have never, until that time, and even it took years before I experienced my first overt racism in the United States. That happened in Boston on July 4th night. And this was my first year in medical school. So just to come back a little bit. So I was in New York City when I moved here in 98. Mm-hmm. I was in City University of New York, Hunter College. I was a biological science major. And before then, let me go back. So it took me a year before starting college, and I was applying for jobs. So there was this fancy Italian restaurant, which is still there, Cipriani, in Soho. They also have another restaurant in Rockefeller Center, the Rainbow Room. So I went there to apply for a job, and I said I wanted to be a bus boy or a waiter. And they're like, oh, we don't have a spot for you now, maybe a pantry boy for now. And later on, we'll move you up or something like that. So I said, okay. And this is just 6 months being in America. So, hey, young, barely 19 years at that time, I took it. I was there for almost a year before starting college. And I realized that other people were employed as bus boy waiters who were not Black. They were like Hispanic heritage or white. And I asked, and I was never given that job. It didn't hit me. It was some form of racism because I was then naive. I was now getting into it. And then somewhere in 1999, the first major case happened in Bronx, New York, Amadou Diallo. Amadou Diallo was shot in Bronx, New York, about 40-something bullets. And he's from West Africa. I think he's from Sierra Leone or Senegal, one of the nations there. And I couldn't make sense of it because in Ghana, growing up, police barely have guns. Nobody gets shot. I mean, even when you have armed robbery cases, it's 1 or 2 bullets, like 41 times to take a guy. So I was wrestling with the idea, like, why does he need to be shot 41 times? I mean, 1 bullet, 2 could pause him what he's doing. So that was me wrestling with that emotion. What does it mean? What is it? So my parents were very watchful of me going out, like at certain time of the day. And even working as a pantry boy, I was working from 7 p.m. to 3 a.m. My dad was a yellow cab driver. He had to change his schedule so that he works late night and he can be at the restaurant by 3 o'clock to pick me up and drive us home to Brooklyn. Just so that I don't have to ride the subway or, be out there walking to the subway, somebody stopping me. So my dad had to alter his schedule for almost a year just to take me home. Or days that he can't, he will have a friend who drives yellow cab to pick me up. There were a few times I had to go home. I had to tell dad, come on, allow me. So those were my experiences until I got to college. And I'll tell you, in college, it was never an overt racism, but I had friends who were discouraged at the pre-med office that they're not good enough to go to medical school. So, and these are people I was in class with. They may not be the most, top notch, but I think their dreams were squashed from the persistent story, like, you're not gonna make the cut, nobody will interview you. And most of the time when I talk to professors, the things that I used to hear was, oh, you speak very well. It didn't hit me what that means. Oh, you're very proper. Those were some of the things that used to come up when I talk to professors. And as I move up to a higher level, like level 300, level 400, where sometimes you're the only person of color in those higher level courses and stuff. Fast forward to Boston. So this is 2000 in Boston University. July 4th night, my best friend from college, he was also a medical student at Rochester University in New York. And he had come down to spend the weekend with me. I had one other female friend that I had met this summer doing the program at Harvard. She's from Puerto Rico, but she looks very white, Rebecca. She's like the white Hispanic. So we all went out to see the fireworks. On our way back, there was a paramedic blocking a road, so we couldn't go in. So we had to back out and then use the other way. The police stopped us and said, why are we going that way? And I told him, oh, the paramedic blocked us. They told us they can't move, so we should go back. And right there and there, he's like, I need everybody's ID. And I said, why do you need our IDs? If anything, maybe I'm the one driving. And he's like, no. So he had the flashlight, how Mrs. Weaver described, flashlight on us, looking at us. And my friend at the back, he kept saying, Kwesi, just do what he says. I'm like, no, he shouldn't. So I was fighting. And my friend was sitting in the car like, don't do this, let's not. So the long and short of it, he told me that my insurance is going to expire in 3 weeks' time. He better not meet me again with expired insurance. And I said, what do you mean? So I told him, by the way, we are medical students. Don't let me call the dean from the school, because what you're doing, you're harassing us. To me, that was the first time in your face experiencing that. So, and of course, in my professional life, from residency to now, it's always been that subtle form, like some of it almost close to what Jeff was describing, more subtle, so this is like the 2000s now. The common question is, oh, are you the doctor? Are you sure you're not the nurse? Meanwhile, I'm wearing the white coat with my name and everything on. And then they'll ask me, oh, so where did you go to school? And when I say Boston University, they go like, oh, that's a very good school. And I get that often. Initially I didn't know, and my nurses would be standing there and then they'll go like this. They always have to cover their face because they know it's not really coming from a very good place, So let me pause there for now. So that is my experiences so far.
Thank you, Kwesi. So 50s, 60s, 80s, 90s, 2000. So Juliet, I'm interested now to hear whatever you would share about being a young person of color in our society.
Good morning, everybody. Like Pastor Greg mentioned, I come from Nigerian immigrants. My mom, who came to the United States in 1997, and my dad, who had come here, I think, in 1981. My parents are very, very hardworking. My mom is a nurse at Cooper Hospital and Kennedy Hospital. My dad works as a nursing assistant in St. Mary's and Brookdale. So I learned a lot from them about hard work, but I learned especially from them that given who I am and the way I look, I always have to work harder. And at first I thought that was just, like a pep talk, like, you have to work hard to get to where you need to be. But I realized that it wasn't just my fears that would be my hindrance in life. It wasn't just going to be my fears of facing the unknown or doing something that I've never done before, but it was also the fact that an external force will sometimes try to hinder you, and you may not have control over that. And they taught me this constantly. I never knew what they meant until I was 6 years old. Um, I went to elementary school at Sharp School. It's in Old Orchard Road. And in first grade, I was in Miss Feinstein's class. And Miss Feinstein was a wonderful, kind, sweet teacher. I went to class with one student. His name, I guess, it was Frankie. And throughout first grade, you know, we talked a little bit, but not a lot. I was so shy. But I believe it was in second grade that Frankie told me he never really spoke to me because he was afraid of me. And I asked him, what do you mean? I was the kind of student who I hardly spoke because I was so shy at that young age. So I knew I was never an oppressor at 6 years old. I was just, you know, me. And he told me, you know, to be honest with you, Julia, I was afraid of you because you were Black. And at that point, it hurt me so much because someone was afraid of me, not because of what I've done, but just because of who I inherently am. And so that paused me a little and definitely made me realize this is what my mom and dad meant by you're going to grow up and work hard, but sometimes be hindered by a force that's out of your control. So I kind of let that experience guide me. I kind of let it allow me to be aware of how society is. But it wasn't really until later on in life when I was in high school that I experienced such occasion again. You know, I was the kind of student who was tried to be friendly with everybody, tried to be helpful however I could. I never caused or instigated anything. But it was the summer after Philando Castile had unfortunately been killed by police brutality. And I remember I tend to run a lot. I like to run, especially up Cropwell Road and Crescent Road near my high school. And whenever I run up the hill, I'm always, you know, minding my business, just focusing on the music and running. I remember that summer was particularly awkward because I felt like I became more aware of the division between white and Black. I felt like the country became more aware. And so that's why that particular Wednesday after Philando Castile had been murdered, I was jogging up and down the hill. And as I went down the hill, there was this mother and daughter who were walking up the hill. And, you know, I kind of walked off the sidewalk to the shoulder of the road so that I can give them a chance to go their way. And as I was jogging past them, the mother kind of pulled her daughter, who looked to be about 7 years old, pulled her very close, whispered in her ear, and was pointing blatantly at me, very blatantly. And I felt a little bit uncomfortable and a little bit unsure of why she was pointing at me and whispering something to her daughter and also embracing her daughter protectively as though I was some threat. And that made me feel really, really worried and afraid because I knew I didn't cause anything yet again. So after talking to my mom, you know, my mom tried to help me believe, oh, maybe, you know, maybe she was just saying, oh, telling her daughter, oh, see how that girl's running, you should go run too. But I said, Mom, that wasn't the kind of face you would make. And I try to give, you know, the benefit of the doubt as often as I can. But I knew something about that situation wasn't right. So where we stand now, I'm in college, I go to school, I'm a rising junior. And now is the time I become very, very aware that I have to work harder than some of my peers. You know, my three best friends from high school, one is Muslim, the other two are Hindu, but they're my best friends. They are the people that I can say I left Cherry Hill having these relationships. And I just know now is the time that I'm young and trying to progress into a career, perhaps as an engineer, perhaps as a biomedical scientist, one or the other. I have to be more and more cognizant of the fact that racism does exist, even to those who don't instigate it, those who mind their business. And so I am very aware now because my mom and dad always tell me as nurses that they are always given the toughest patients, the most patients in a given 12-hour shift. And they always tell me, you know, it's not because they can't handle it, but it's simply because sometimes people try to suppress them. And they believe by giving my parents all these patients that they will be suppressed. But I was talking to my mom this morning. She was telling me about her night. She worked last night. She said, you know, they think it suppresses me, but it actually makes me stronger. So I guess that's what all of those experiences I had are trying to tell me now, that I just need to be strong going forward. But that's basically my platform right now, where I'm standing. I'm more of an observer, and I just hope that all these observations will enable me to not only work harder, but have the ability later on to really affect some sort of change.
And I guess, you know, as I said today in today's sermon, as a white man in a predominantly white congregation and a predominantly white denomination, it seems like this is such an important time for me to stand with my brothers and sisters of color and to be part of the work of stopping systemic discrimination in whatever forms it comes. And so I'm so grateful that you would share with us your stories. I want to say that I need to continue to hear them, and I want to continue to hear them, but not so they become history in the sense that we forget them, but so that we're informed by them for the facing of this present moment. Because I think one of the things that is so clear to me, over 12 years ago, 13 years ago, I sat in Pat Weaver's home with her husband, Joe. And I remember when she first told me some of those stories. And I would love to think that that was all past history. But the reality is that each of you in your various generations and continuing are experiencing racial discrimination. I want to say I'm so grateful. We have about 75 participants who are listening. And if you have questions, you can go to the chat, which is at the bottom. You'll see an icon. You can press on that and you can type a question. That's the way we're taking questions today. I do want to reiterate that we are planning to continue to have some kind of format of these town hall meetings. And so I want to give us a chance. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm being directed by our producer. If you put a question in the Q&A, that's where we'll be able to pick it up. So the chat is not the best place. The Q&A and all the participants, all the attendees, you can go to the icon for Q&A and type a question there. But in terms of the chat, we are just hearing from people saying, thank you so much for sharing your stories. We're so grateful for you doing this. We love you guys. Can I just maybe then go back to Pat and ask, from your vantage point of now seeing where the nation is and what we continue to hear and see, what is it like for you?
It's very, very hard. I'm a granddaughter of a slave, and I know what my great-great-grandfather went through, and then I know what my grandmother went through. And it hurts to see all this killing of Black people. It hurts very much. And I don't know what the answer is.
Pat, you're the grandchild of someone who was enslaved?
Mm-hmm. A great-grandfather.
A great-grandfather.
My great-grandfather was a slave. Mhm. He was freed at the end of the Civil War, so you know that's a long time ago. But anyway, he was put in. He had 5 children. He and his wife were separated, and my grandmother was born at the end of the Civil War. He had 5. He lived in a cooper shop, which was what did I say it was?
It's a slave trading.
Slave, 2 rooms. And you go back and you think of all the things that you've gone through. I never taught my kids to be afraid. You know, we talked to them about the police and to say nothing if they were stopped. My youngest one was stopped so many times when he started driving. He had a hard time. And then in school, I thought I was going to school with my youngest because he was going to school. And I was always at the school because he had one teacher that just gave him a hard time. Anything he did was the wrong thing. And then I used to go to school like every morning with him. We got him a tutor, and he was a little slow. But boys are slower than girls, and I realized that, but the system didn't realize it. They always wanted to put him back for Title I, and then I had a friend that used to come every day for lunch when she was working. She was a substitute teacher, and she used to come when she had subs at Kilmer. She used to come and tell me all the time, Pat, get him out of that room. Get him. He doesn't belong there. Get him out of that room. And I never did anything about it. And then he went to high school, and I can remember that's when I know Nancy Roberts was a secretary at Brainerd at the time. And he had forgotten his lunch money, and I went to school to give him his lunch money. And I'll never forget, I'll always be grateful with some fella. He was a teacher. I don't know his name, but he was crippled. And he had been at Kilmer one time or another when Scott was there. And he always said to me, Mrs. Weaver, you did the right thing by, not putting him in that class. But we had the same thing with Carol when she went to high school. The teacher told her it wasn't like she was going to college. She wasn't going to college. But it's sad what they put you through. You have to always be on your toes. But I've really, even after they had the petition, the people next door, at the end, I had her key. Her sons depended on me because one was at the shore, working at the shore. The father died. Before he died, she had to go to Silver Care. He was at Silver Care. She didn't drive, so she asked me if I would take her. I always took her. She'd call me to come back and pick her up. But she depended on me, and at the end, hey. But anyway, I had her key, and anytime she wanted something, I'd help them out. So I hope I'm not prejudiced, but it hurts so much the way you're treated.
Yeah, but Pat, you doing that, it's like the scriptures say, right? We will shine the light of Christ, and people will glorify our Father because they'll see our good works. Your ability to rise above that terrible situation and care for that neighbor, you became the good neighbor to them, right?
Yes.
That's a powerful witness in my book. But
Okay, I'd like to answer a couple of those questions that I see that have been asked.
Can you see them, Jeff? Yes.
Yes, I can see.
Okay.
The first question, I think, comes from one of your relatives. As a white woman, what would you like to do to help combat this discrimination? I think that it's a threefold problem. I see this as not only a social issue, but a biblical issue. In the biblical issue, it's either you're right or wrong because God is love. I think that comes from 1 John 4:8. Whoever does not love does not know God. Okay, so, and I think racism is basically a form of hate. So to solve this problem, it's threefold. First, we must be willing to accept that a problem exists by acknowledging it. Second thing we have to do is identify the problem. Okay, and the third thing is, and that's what's I think happening this time, is we have to find others that are willing to accept the responsibility for solving this problem, which means all of us. It means us becoming unified. Divided, we're going to fall. We're only going to survive if we become unified. So that's the answer to that question that I would have. I'll let others answer the others that I see, but that's the first one I think that we have to try. We have to acknowledge that there is a problem and identify it, and then we have to all be willing to do our part to solve it.
So acknowledge, identify, and then work together as a team to address it.
Yes. Yes.
So I'll try and answer. I've read all the questions, so I hope I don't beat about the bush, but I may provide. So I agree with Jeff. The first thing is to acknowledge, and it's not just acknowledging, but looking deep down within you, because most people are not racist. Most people are not racist or going about doing bad stuff to people, but we allow people who are in position, when things are happening, we go, oh, that's so bad. Oh, may God help them. And then we move on like that because it's not me doing it. The person doesn't relate to me. So there's that feeling where we feel detached that, oh, it's not me. And I think there was a question about we are helpless. What can we do? I think to me, I was thinking about it. You can start from your home. You can start with your children. You can start with your grandchildren. Because if you complete the conversation we have back to them, you can ask them tough questions. I think when I talked to Reverend, I kind of summarized that at the end of this series or anybody having a race relationship conversation, I think there are 4 questions. It's sort of an open-ended question, but to touch on. The first question is, what is wrong with the color black? Or what is wrong with the dark skin? What is wrong? Biologically, what is wrong? I mean, what is wrong? Like, God created everything in its own image. If we are Christians and we believe that, God made everything all beautiful. So what is wrong with being black? If you can explain it to me biblically or biologically or scientifically, true sense, tell me what is wrong with being black. 2, when you see me or when you see us, when you see a black person, what do you feel? What goes through your mind? What are the thoughts? And then the last thing is, where are these thoughts and feelings coming from? Ask yourself that question. Talk to your friends, your family, your children, your grandchildren. Where are they coming from? And then see if there's really, and where is it coming from? Is it from the media? Does it make sense? Because if somebody you've never seen before, met before, and you can't give that benefit of the doubt, something is not right about that. So I think those are the 4 big questions that you can play with and discuss, and it can take shape in different forms and how it goes, but it has to be honest. Honesty, you have to talk, you have to be honest with yourself. Reverend said this is a brainchild of mine. I've been in the United States for 22 years, and these issues have been going on the 22 years, but I've never been very, very proactive or that very emotionally charged or emotionally worried as I was when the whole Mr. Floyd case happened. And I'll tell you the reasons why, because I feel like my fears were I'm just seeing them being played in front of my eyes. I live in Cherry Hill. So all my friends tease me, oh, the bougie one, you live in Cherry Hill. And I tell them, well, actually, I hate to say this, Phil, it's kind of dangerous for me. They're like, what do you mean? I said, I've never gone jogging in my neighborhood. I'll never go jogging by myself in the neighborhood. I said, the only time I'll go jogging for a run in my neighborhood is if I have my baby in a stroller and a dog with me. Then I'm not perceived as a threat. I hate to say it, but that's the truth.
That's how you feel.
That's how I feel. And I've warned my brother, Desmond, who's 26. I mean, he works out, so he's about 5'10", a little over 200 pounds, well built, and he's left a beard, you know. So I've told him several times, Desmond, please, you can do your skipping rope behind the house, or maybe worst case, bike riding, but do not go jogging. And I like to think people in Cherry Hill, my neighborhood is fine, but you never know who's gonna make that call. Like what happened in Central Park a few weeks ago. That is my worst fear, because 1 minute Desmond will tell me, oh, Chrissy, I'm going jogging. 5 minutes, I'll get a call from the police like, oh, Mr. Manu, do you know, can we talk to you? And it's like day and night happened within 5 minutes. That's what happened in Central Park. It's one of my worst fear that I could be talking to my wife. Oh, honey, I'm going for a jog. And then 10 minutes later, she gets a call that he's gone. And she's like, what happened? He's going for a jog. It's real. That is something I feel inside me. And I feel like it happened. And then the other thing is, I'm going to be a father for the first time in less than 2 months or less time. And when George Floyd the guy was kneeling down his neck, it was very gruesome. But the part that really hit me was he was calling for his mom. The man is 46 years old. How many 46 years old call for their mom? And his mom is already dead. He knows that his mom is dead. I've lost my mom. She died through a stroke. Anything I think of my mom, there's something that it's just visceral, it's deep. And whenever I watch the video and I see him calling for his mom, and I think of my son who's coming to this world, then I realize that I'm not living this world for myself. What world is he coming into? What world is my bloodline gonna live in? It has to be better than that. I want them to walk around, because I'm a physician. If something happens to you on the road, I think you want me to be the first person right there for you. But I'm Black. I'm not dangerous. So those 4 questions that I just posed, and I don't know if we can type it, that is one way to start this honest conversation or start approaching racism.
And maybe those are some of the questions that we should think about with our community. All of you that are attending, it was my decision to limit this to our community, because I want us to have a place where we are safe to talk amongst ourselves. It has been our decision to record this, and it is our plan to place it on our website. I will confirm that all with the panelists one last time after this is all over.
Reverend, sorry, let me give you a story about what I said. So I can't remember the exact year, but this is more than 5 years ago. And I think it had just happened after the Harvard professor Louis Gate had gone back to his house after traveling, and the police stopped in the whole fracas that happened. I think it was within a few weeks after that, I went to Cherry Hill Mall, and I used a different car key, which didn't have the house keys. So I got back. My wife wasn't living with me, hasn't moved from Ghana at that time. So it was just me. Desmond was in college. So I got back to my driveway, and I realized I can't enter the house. I don't have the house key. I don't have a spare key anywhere else. So I called the 911. I told them, this is an emergency. I just need help getting into the house. Great. Within 5 minutes, trust me, the fire truck, the police with the siren. I was like, oh my God. I felt embarrassed in that sense, which is good. So the reason why I called is, and I'll tell you the reason why I called the police or called 911 to help me, is because I didn't know it's my own house. It was summertime. So the windows may be open, but if I should decide to open the window and go through, I don't know who around is watching me. Because I'll tell you this, I always feel in this neighborhood there's an invisible eye watching me. I'll be honest with you. I'm the only Black person or Black family within 10 houses around me. And most of my neighbors haven't said hello to me since I moved here. I tried to go door to door to say hello when I moved here 8 years ago. I did, but no, very 2, 3 of them. So I feel like there's an invincible eye just watching me all the time. So me going through the window, I will not get benefit of the doubt. I'll get a call, and the police coming in, I have to expect certain degree of aggression because it's a black man going through a window. So I just stood outside and called. And then when they came in, I was true. The windows was open. He jumped through. I gave him the code. 5 minutes, they were gone. Everything was done. But I had to be very careful, take that extra caution.
So we have many more questions coming in, which I'm delighted by. I want to ask all of you who are attending, there's about 70 of you. Can you just give us feedback and let us know, would you like to continue to participate in these kinds of discussions? And perhaps if there's things that you would like us, themes that you would like us to take up. There are several questions, but I think one of the ones that we've seen in several places here is, as you came to Trinity Presbyterian Church, did you feel welcome? Do you feel accepted and welcomed? And are there ways that you feel in our church family that we could do more? I guess the question is to make you feel welcome and make sure you know that you're welcome in the church family. So I guess again, we don't have a whole lot of time, but did you feel welcome when you came, and do you feel accepted at Trinity? Pat, did you feel accepted when y'all came?
Yes, Reverend Odell was very, very good. And Jerry Banda and Joan Cohen, I've known ever since I've been here. But I had friends from Trinity, so I felt accepted by them. And then I'm not that outgoing, I don't think, only to the people that I know. But anyway, I did feel accepted.
Trinity was my childhood home, and I had a great time there. It started my foundation. Roger was in charge of us, who was under Reverend Odell, and I loved going to church every Sunday. Matter of fact, I didn't like to go home because I had a lot of friends there, so you got to see them. And back in the day, you had neighborhood friends. You had a friend in your neighborhood. That's who you hung out with. This extended my friendship because these people from other neighborhoods, I didn't see them all week. So yeah, I had this little bit of time to find out what was going on in their lives, and they had a little bit, and we had a lot of fun together.
And you still did.
Yeah, and I still have a lot of friends.
I'll let Juliet talk because she hasn't spoken.
Yeah, Juliet, what has been your experience?
I feel like I feel like Trinity has definitely been one of those places where I can feel comfortable as a person. My family and I, we go there all as a huge bunch. We take up one row. We're so large. And everyone is just happy and welcoming and just acknowledging of our presence. And I love it very much. I never will associate any of my experiences with race in the church. I will never say that I had any such experience there. But I did want to mention as a side note, everyone was sharing their experience about feeling very aware of who they are because of who they are. And I just wanted to mention, I have an 18-year-old brother who is about to go off to college this fall. And I just wanted to mention how terrified I unfortunately am of him going to college, because me and my older sister were already in college, but we're women. And I definitely feel like there's some distinction between how Black women and Black men are treated. So it's not natural to have a fear of your brother who causes no sort of trouble whatsoever, a very good young boy going off to school.
And a sweeter heart there's never been than in Abina. Yeah. And I think perhaps that is the place for us to say that there are more questions to be asked and there's more stories to listen to. I think I can speak for all of us that participated. I thank you so much for sharing your stories, because through those stories, you've shared your heart with us. And I know that has not been easy. And so we've asked you to do something because we need your help, and you've been willing to, and you didn't have to. And so I want to thank you as our sisters and brothers in Christ for helping us. I want you to know that it is our commitment as a church family to continue to work against racism in all its forms. And I think Kwesi and Jeff are right. You have to start with the I and the family and keep moving out. We are going to certainly continue to have these conversations. Again, our thanks to Pat Weaver and Dr. Jeffrey Weaver and Dr. Kwesi Manu and Julietta Corey so much. Susan Bassnagel and Jenny Stark for producing this and making sure that it all happened. And all of our participants, thank you so much, church family. It seems right to me that as we end this, that we end it with prayer. So might I offer that prayer for us and with us? Oh God, our Heavenly Father, we know that you have made us all in your divine image, and that you have called us good, very good, at the moment of that creation. So we pray that you help us as sisters and brothers of Jesus Christ and of one another to work so that all people might be valued, that all people might be held in love, might be considered precious, even as they are to you. So give us strength, Lord, to keep working for the good. Thank you so much for all of our panelists. Bless them and their families. Assure them today that they are loved in our congregation. Lord, bless our nation, bless our leaders, and bless the family called Trinity, that we might be part of making it a better place. For all this we ask in the name of Christ, who gave his life that we might be free of all sin. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you all. I will be in touch with all of you shortly, but thank you. God bless you all. And thank you all for attending.
Thank you.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Pat.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff.
Thank you.